It isn't very often that we get a chance to originate a television program from the famous hometown television studios here on the Ridge Road in Champlain, but that's where we are. And we're delighted to be here with you. Calvin said I'm going to zoom in over your shoulder when we start the program because we got some video going of a trip to the Holy Land. And I have been looking forward to coming up here to do this program for a long, long time. We have distinguished guests on our little corner today, and we'll leave it up to them to prove how distinguished they are before we're finished with our show. Over on this end, Father Gordon from Sacred Heart and Shazy. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you, Gordy.
Delighted to have you here today. I didn't mean to break your arm. When I shook his hand when I came in, he said, "Oh, my shoulder. A little arthritis in the shoulders." You didn't get that in Jerusalem, I hope.
No, I'm getting old.
Nancy LeClaire, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
And you made the trip too.
Oh, yes, I enjoyed it.
We're going to be talking a lot about that. And Deacon Bob over here, how are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you, Gordy. I'm recuperating from heart bypass here the last several weeks. But I was very excited when Calvin called me about this, and hopefully we can give you a good program.
I found out about 3 minutes ago that we have a mutual friend, Len Snow in Osable Forks. We did a wonderful program with he and his wife, and what a colorful guy. I didn't realize you were originally from that area.
Yes, I left there back in 1950, but that's where we were originated from, and I came and met my wife down at Aris Laboratories back in '56. That was my doomsday, so to speak.
Oh, how dare he say that? You have...
Oh, I know him
You
by
can
now.
have... Oh, you do? Well, you get equal time. For every word he says, you get equal time over here. And you're... We're equal opportunity employers on this little television show.
I want to add one thing about our trip, Gordy. On the day we left, November 10th, it was our 43rd anniversary. So it was a really memorable trip.
Oh, that's decent. Father, tell us how the idea was conceived.
Well, I guess it started with myself. Back in 1992, Christopher Cross, who leads the tour groups that I am familiar with, begged me to go to the Holy Land with him. He had done that before 1992, and I always said no. And all of a sudden, one year, I said, okay, I'll go next year. Next year arrived. And I said, oh, I've got to fulfill my promise to Chris. So I went and had no desire to go at all. I really did not want to go. I got to New York, got on this big 747, and we landed in Tel Aviv, and I said to myself, what am I doing here? We got on a bus, and we went up to Jerusalem, and I was totally hooked. The Holy Land is an experience that everyone really should encounter in their life. Now, this trip that we did last November was the 5th time I have been there. And
Five
times? Five times. So when I came to Sacred Heart Parish, some people knew that I had been, and they had asked me, are you going to go again? So I put out some feelers, and there were people interested, and so last November we went. We had too many people on the trip. We say that looking back. Correct, folks?
Right.
There were 75 people that went.
You've got to be kidding. Not from this area.
Not all from here,
Oh.
no. There was a group of us from here, and the other half of the group came from the Albany area. It was a great experience. I would never go with that many people again. Chris would never go with that many people. But it wasn't a negative at all. It was a wonderful experience, especially to be there at the beginning of the Jubilee year and the new millennium and so on and so forth. A remarkable, remarkable experience. People ask me, you've been 5 times, isn't it getting kind of stale? Every time you go, it is a wonderful experience.
This time, Nance, how long were you there?
Oh, we were there, 10 days? From the time we left?
Something like that.
8
What?
to 10.
And time flies when you're having fun,
Oh,
right?
It was over with before we had a chance to really realize that we were time to go home. You know, it was beautiful. And we had great weather, no rain. So we had a really gorgeous trip.
We're going to talk a lot about it. As a matter of fact, later in this program, we're going to show about 1,015 miles of footage that you folks took over there, and we're going to chat about it. You got to leave on your, what anniversary? 43rd?
43rd anniversary.
Neither one of you look a day over.
Be careful.
60.
Now, you had never been there before.
No, I had never been there before.
I've often said on this program, and I'm proud to say, that I grew up hearing stories of the Holy Land from my mother, who was somewhat of a religious zealot back in the early part of this century. She was positive in the teens and early 20s that she was going to save every soul in the world, and she never dreamed she would ever get to the Holy Land, but her grandfather died and left. He owned some property in a big wood and coal company down in Rockland County, and left each one of the kids some money. And with that money, she got on the boat. And I am so fortunate because I grew up looking through these hand-carved wooden covered books, and inside were pressed all the flora of the Holy Land with the name of each one of those flowers. I have those. I have diaries that my mother wrote. I have all the postcards she bought and hundreds of pictures that she took. And you talked about haggling to buy things, and she brought a dagger back that she swears she stopped a guy on a horse and said, "How much for the dagger?" And he whipped it out, and she wasn't sure how she was going to get the dagger for a minute. And she told stories of going into the pyramids. And back in those days, the guide got them way inside and then shut off the light and told them how much money it would take to turn the light back on. But I've got her pictures, and I've got all the memorabilia, and every once in a while I look in that very special cardboard box of things, and it makes me long to carry suitcases for people like you who make this trip. But it was really good for you, Nancy.
Oh, yes. And your mother you talked about the flowers. The flowers there are beautiful, all along the roadway.
The olive trees and the famous mustard seeds, and she brought back samples of just about anything. She was a real tourist and a very interesting lady and a wonderful storyteller. I wish you were here to join us today. It was great for you too, Deacon Bob.
Very much so. It's a trip I've been wanting to make for years. As a matter of fact, I was in the service in France back in the 50s, and I had already planned on a 10-day vacation there, and I got bumped off by a couple other of the military guys, so here I've waited for 40 some odd years before I finally made it. But spiritually and any other way, it was a trip that I could never stop talking about. It is one that, like Father said, I think anyone that possibly can should make the trip.
I think the message is if you get a chance, do it.
Oh,
We
yeah.
always put things off until we're too old or too broke to accomplish it. So, life is full of opportunities, and how many just go by us at about 85 miles an hour and we don't grab them,
See, I should say about 8-10 years ago, I said to the wife, we'll get our passports and we'll go to Europe and we'll do this, that, and the other thing. Well, we held off for several years. Well, last year we went to Germany and then took a bus tour with a bunch of Germans to Italy. So I got her to Rome, where I had been back in the 50s. And here this came up with Father Gordon, and I said, Nancy and I will be your first two on the list. So we made that one. And now we're going with a group out of Vermont in September, if all goes well, to the Passion Play in Oberammergau, Germany. So
It's not fair. You're breaking my heart, Robert.
well, that's the intent, to get you really excited about all this and make that trip over there.
Kay and I got our passports too about 100 years ago, and we were going to Rome, Italy, through some outfit up in Montreal, and we were going to be unofficial honorary tour guides and get the trip for free through the radio station. And we got our passports and we were all set to go. Had the bags packed, and then the company went belly up, and the trip went belly up, and the passports are probably long since expired. Oh, but this each time is a great experience, Father, you said, and now with everything that's happening in the Pope's visit, were these the most emotional things, to watch him at the Wailing Wall and sit there with the tears going down your face? You're so overwhelmed with emotion, and he was too, wasn't he?
Very much so. I was glued to the television watching the Holy Father in the Holy Land, probably saying, gee, we were in all these places that we see the Holy Father. I chuckled and said I got there before he did, but it was good to see him there, and the emotion of it all is unbelievable. To be in these places where you know the Lord walked and taught, you can feel the Lord's presence in the Holy Land like no other. I can't explain it. You have to be there, do it yourself, and experience what this is. I remember talking to someone who had been there, not on one of the trips that I went on, but they said when they came home, they got nothing out of it. All they saw were rocks. And I said, hey, come on. There are an awful lot of rocks in the Holy Land, but the spiritual experience of it is overwhelming. And I am sure that Nancy and Bob would agree with me on that.
You've got to go with the right frame of mind.
Right.
And like you said, this is where our Lord walked and where he talked. And science, archaeology, is now finding more and more places every year. We open National Geographic magazine or watch a television special, and we find out we're learning more and more where things really, really did happen. And wow, to be there and just open up your heart and your soul and your mind and drink it in, it's got to be an experience.
From early morning, when you'd get up early and walk the streets to the Holy Sepulchre, that was very emotional and exciting and all wrapped into one. I really enjoyed the morning.
Now, who was the picture taker here? Who took all this video that we're going to see?
Oh, that was Peter Bedard, and his wife, yeah.
Did you guys take your own pictures?
Well, we
Still
got
bigger?
photographs. I got an album here, and
He started with it on his lap, and that
Yep.
weighs about 15 pounds. So
it's pretty heavy. I got over 300 and some photos in there, I guess.
really?
And then the other memorabilia that we brought back. And this is primarily the wife's idea, except for the wine. That's mine. Back in...
he wouldn't. He said, and Gordy, just this is for your benefit, we're not going to open it today. I don't know where that came from.
We're not going to
but-
tap it. This one here, I just bought the card, and I put it in a frame when I got home, but it just struck me because it identifies the cross that Christ died on, with the spear that he was lanced with, the hammer they drove the nails. Here are the nails. There's the sponge that they wanted to give him a drink with. It just meant so much to me. And the gentleman over there at Dejani's souvenir place wanted $6 for it, and I said, it's pretty much. So I got it for $3, but I thought it was well worth the $3. So here it is.
You are,
Yeah.
you are truly amazing.
Oh, I'm telling you.
You know, I sit here talking with you folks, and I'm thinking, I don't know if there is some kind of a religious renaissance. I say this every once in a while as we hear more people sitting in coffee shops and talking religion and debating religion and comparing their religious beliefs. But it seems like everywhere I go, on television, major news programs are not now afraid to talk about religion and deep religious faith. And now we're recording this on March 30th, 2000. And last week's Newsweek magazine, from cover to cover, discussing the life of Jesus with a cover picture. That's not too shabby, overshadowing the Oscars and everything else, right, Father?
Right, that's true. It was interesting that cover picture on Newsweek talked about Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And certainly when you're in the Holy Land, as the Holy Father experienced there, you're surrounded by Christians, Jews, and Muslims everywhere you look. And they have political problems, as the Holy Father discovered when he got there. He knew that before he got there, but there were some situations that were kind of tense that he was in. But I think one of the things that the Holy Father accomplished there was to bring understanding between everyone. It was amazing to watch several ecumenical programs that they had where all of these people were there together and they were sharing and they were listening, and hopefully a great deal of understanding and more efforts towards peace will be the result.
Isn't that something that we're all hoping and praying for,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
have been for generations and thousands of years?
Oh, yeah.
Could it be that we're on the brink? I don't know.
Hopefully. I mean, even in the Lord's time, these things were going on.
Oh,
I mean,
I
nothing's
guess they were.
changed. Nothing's changed. But certainly the Holy Father's trip there, as time goes on, will be a huge impact on the world, especially in the Middle East.
There is no question about it. It was impactful and insightful, and created a lot of discussion, as I said, around coffee tables. And when you get kids coming home from school and talking to their parents about religion because the teachers brought it up in their social class, I think we're getting closer to where we want to be in terms of this understanding. That's not a bad word. Nancy, were you ever afraid in any way when you're over there? That's a
No,
long
you
ways
don't.
from home.
Yes, but you don't notice any turmoil. Everybody is friendly, and we got along with everybody. The only problem that we notice is people having trouble with their vehicles and getting upset, in traffic, and they get out of the car and they argue with one another, and they jump back in their vehicle and take off.
I think that's the word where the word haggling probably came from, don't you, Father?
Could be. There was one interesting event that took place while we were there, and the people with us didn't know about it until after. We did not tell them. Chris and I were informed that when we got to Jericho, when we got to the Jericho area, we first went to Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and then we spent maybe an hour at the Dead Sea on an absolutely gorgeous day. Remember that, folks? It was like 85, 90 degrees in November, and we were sitting there by the Dead Sea. We left there and were informed that there was some kind of a riot taking place on one of the entry roads to Jericho. In fact, they were stoning tour buses as they were coming into the...
wonderful.
Wonderful.
This makes you feel good all
Great.
over.
So we decided we wouldn't tell the folks that this was going on. We were told to take another route into Jericho, and on the tour bus it was interesting. Several people said, "Isn't this an awful long way when we could see this before?" Well, yeah, it was a long way. We avoided the problem, and we told the folks maybe, I think it was the next day, that the problem had been there, but we never saw it. But these things are there. It is the Middle East, and you really do not feel uncomfortable, as Nancy said. There is military everywhere. You see guns everywhere. There are soldiers everywhere. And I say to myself, the country is very secure. If anything happened, they would stop it in a second.
How were the accommodations? What, did you stay in a hotel, Bob?
Yes, sir. Several of them. Mighty nice. And I think in my case, the meals were great. That's what I look forward to.
I was going to get around to that.
That's what I look forward to. Of course, we, like Nancy said earlier, we would get up at 5, go to the Holy Sepulchre for Mass at 6:30. Then we'd go to our souvenir shop, get back to the hotel for breakfast. Well, hey, by that time you're pretty hungry, you didn't have coffee before you left and whatever. And let me tell you, they had a spread. It was really nice. And then it was eat and run again. We're off someplace, it didn't make any difference where. And who knows when you were going to get your next meal, but you didn't care. You were really interested in going to that next shrine, basilica, or whatever. That's what we were there for. We didn't waste any time, believe me.
Did you try any of the native foods?
Yeah, I'm not much for uncooked fish. But they had plenty of
I'm not
that,
either.
my friend. Plenty of that, Gordy.
I don't hang out in sushi bars, I can promise you that.
Yeah.
That may be the last place in the world I would go.
No, I didn't take time to go to an out-of-the-way restaurant or a little cafe or anything because it took away from what I wanted to see as a monument, something spiritually for myself. Other than the regular meals at the hotel, that was pretty much it. Now, our tour guide did bring us in some nice cream puffs there a couple times on the bus, and he'd say, well, one or two per, and you really chopped them down, you know. That was
Sounds
some
like
good
my
stuff.
kind of tour guide.
That
I may
was
have
some
to
good
sign
stuff.
up.
Chris is a wonderful guy, very much so. I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to going back with him again next year. Wife says I can go even if she doesn't. I'm ready. I'm ready.
See, I don't know what we might have going over here, but I think it's just a friendly discussion.
Well, I wouldn't mind going again myself, but the only thing is that long airplane flight over and back. That is the hardest part of the trip.
But it's long at best, and if there are any delays along the way, and those things happen from time to time, was it smooth going? Did you have to wait in
yeah.
airports a long time? or-
Not unusual amount, I don't
Father's
think.
nodding his head.
The first part
He's
on the
done
way
it before.
down, but
Our had a few little complications. We all met in Albany and took two buses down to JFK, and one of the buses broke down on the New York Thruway.
Wouldn't you know?
So that delayed us a little bit. It didn't delay the flight or anything, but we got to New York to JFK, and the flight was delayed and delayed and delayed. We were supposed to leave something like 11 at night. It didn't board until 1:45 in the morning, which put us in Tel Aviv, of course, behind time. And it's about a 10-hour flight over there, and you get there and you're really tired. But we got there. We got on the bus to Jerusalem. We probably arrived in Jerusalem, must have been 10:30 at night, around that time. And the hotel we stayed in had a big dinner, buffet style, for us. And we were exhausted, let me tell you. And Chris announced that there would be a wake-up call, I think he said at 4:30 in the morning. And we are now
Well, he
7-hour time difference, okay? Well, I can remember my phone ringing in my room the next morning, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what country I was in. And the voice said, "Where are you?
We're
The bus
waiting."
is leaving. We're waiting for you." And I said, "What time is it?" Well, I never got the wake-up call. If I did, I slept through it. So it is a long time going over there, and you're tired when you get there. But you have to realize what you're there for, so just keep going. When you come home, you rest.
Then you get rested
That's
up.
right.
Do you know, when you were telling me about too many people, it reminds me of our famous Mission of Hope series that we've done with the folks from Seton who went to Nicaragua and went a couple of times, and how they stayed in Montreal all night waiting to get on the plane and so on. And they had a huge number of people that went with them. And because it's so successful, and because it impacts the lives of these youngsters, and Calvin and I are blown away. We had to stop the camera 22 times the first time we interviewed them last year because everybody's crying. It's such an emotional experience. We've got young kids, 14 and 15 years old, who now are going to be missionaries because of one little trip to Nicaragua, and they found out what love is all about and a lot of other things. But they did take too many people this year, and they're liable to break it up in a different way next year. But overall, the experience was a great one. We're going to spend a lot more time looking at footage, turning around and piping some of the video that these folks took on their trip and describing it along the way. I hope you stay with us. It's a great program from Calvin's Place up in Champlain. Everything you see while you're there has a tremendous significance. You mentioned that to us. Everything you see. It's an overwhelming experience. What are we looking at now, Father?
We're in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, and the Holy Sepulchre Church is considered the holiest spot for Christians. It is here that you find Calvary, you find the tomb of Jesus, and right now we are looking at the anointing rock. Tradition says it was on this rock that the body of Jesus was placed when he was taken down from the cross and anointed for burial. To the left of the anointing rock, we can't see it right here, is the tomb of Jesus. What we're looking at is a picture that's above the anointing rock, and it is a description of the Lord's body being placed there.
We have to thank the Bedards for taking a lot of the footage that we see here. Does this, when you look at this, does it bring back a few memories, Bob?
Quite a few, as a matter of fact. I was most amazed to walk in, and it's so, well, it's really dark, but to realize that this was actually the slab of stone that they laid our Savior on. It's really, it brought tears to my eyes to go over and just place my hands on it. Now what we're looking at here is one of the upper level. It's the altar of the crucifixion, and you'll see there's someone placed underneath the altar. There's a circular hole under there that you can reach down and actually touch the ledge that supposedly the cross where Christ was crucified was placed in. This again is an area where most of us will take a rosary or a medal that we've got, and we will reach down in there and touch it to have that blessed or whatever, you know. It's the whole area is such a moving thing. And we would have a mass up here each morning also. There would be a mass here, and as Father mentioned earlier, there's the tomb of Christ down below at the lower level. One of the priests would say mass there, and we would just disperse. Some would be at one and one at the other. Very nice.
Did you, Nancy, did you ever wonder how many pilgrims had stood where you stood before you did?
I'm sure there were thousands and thousands and millions of them, and not just Catholic, but Protestant, Jews, all nationalities that go there. Now this is the Mass at the Calvary, and we went there every morning that we were in Jerusalem to attend Mass.
Now, Father, you said tradition says. Some of these things we know, and some of these things we take on faith, and some things we're changing our opinions down through the years. But these are the places that tradition says these actual events happen.
That's correct. Everything that we see here, tradition says this is the place, and no one disputes them. This really is it. We're still here on Calvary. There are 3 altars here in this area. The one we're looking at right now where you can touch down is Golgotha, where the cross was stood up after Jesus was crucified. Calvary, where he was nailed to the cross, is on the right-hand side, and in between them there's an altar of the Sorrowful Mother. I'm not sure where we are at the moment.
But the sights and the sounds and the smells stay with you for all this time. We're going to pause for just a moment. All right, where are we?
This is the outside of the Holy Sepulchre Church. It's the main entrance, the only entrance into the church. This church was built around the year 300, and there it still is. This is a souvenir store that is just down the street on Dabaga Street from the Holy Sepulchre Church. It is here we would go every morning, and the souvenirs here are beautiful. There are all kinds of olive wood crucifixes and statues, and you can see everybody is very busy buying the place out. These are the Dejani brothers in Jerusalem. There's one of them right there. Christopher Cross, the tour leader, and the Dejanis are very good friends, and they tell us they gave us very good deals. So they said. Everything for everybody was 50% off.
I told you they invented the word haggle, so...
Now what we're looking at here is one of the streets in Old Jerusalem, and it's early in the morning as we're coming from the Holy Sepulchre Church. And you can see that all the fronts of these stores are closed. They haven't opened up yet. See that? Once they open, you can hardly get down these streets. They're so chock full of people, it's like playing defensive football to go up and down the streets.
Okay, what's this?
This is the panoramic view of the old city of Jerusalem. You see the gold dome there that is very familiar to everyone. It's the Dome of the Rock. And the walls of the city of Jerusalem you can see below it. And the walls surround the old city of Jerusalem. Now where we are is way up the top of the Mount of Olives. And we descended from here down into the Kidron Valley and the Garden of Gethsemane. It is quite an experience to go down there.
And we're in the garden.
This is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the man we're looking at with the sunglasses on is Christopher Cross, our tour leader. Chris has led approximately 30 to 35 pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and he's got 3 or 4 more coming up this year. So he's pointing out various things here at the Garden of Gethsemane. We're standing outside the Church of Dominus Flavit, which simply means the Lord wept, because from here you can look right out at the entire city of Jerusalem. Again, we're looking out in the Kidron Valley from the Garden of Gethsemane, and what we're looking at here are tombs, the cemetery of the Jewish people. And you will notice here that most of these are all above ground burials. If you look closely, you will find rocks on top of each one of the tombs, and that is a Jewish custom. If you saw the movie Schindler's List, you saw this at the end of the movie where everyone came and left a rock on Mr. Schindler's tomb. When a Jewish person visits the grave of someone, they leave a rock there. The rock is a symbol of prayer and of saying, "We have visited." So as you look at all of these rocks or on top of these graves, you will see some people have had a lot of visitors and others have had none. This walkway is going down from the Mount of Olives down into the Kidron Valley and into the Garden of Gethsemane.
It's very interesting that we're viewing this during Lent in 2000, and some of these things come pretty close to home, things that we've been thinking about, right, Father?
That's correct. You notice everyone is touching a rock. This is the traditional place where Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane that this cup would be taken from him, and the altar, we're not seeing it too clearly here, over this rock is in the shape of a cup to remind us of where we are. This is a sculpture outside near the olive trees in the Garden of Gethsemane of Jesus praying in the garden. We're now across the street at the traditional place where Judas betrayed Jesus.
We have history in the United States, and we look back 300 years, and then we go, where are we now, Father?
Well, we are near the Pool of Bethesda in Jerusalem, just inside of Stephen's Gate in the Old City. Right next to the Pool of Bethesda was St. Anne's Church and the birthplace of Mary. And so here, right nearby, in the Gospels, we know of the man who waited 38 years for the water to be stirred so that he could be placed in the waters to be healed. Well, this is it, and they know this is it, and this was the water supply for the city of Jerusalem, and now we only have the ruins of it, and it's very, very deep. You would wonder how they had all this water there, because Israel's in the desert, but here is where it was all stored. Hopefully we will get a good picture of the depth of all of this.
Now here comes that view.
This is the view of the whole water reservoir. It stretches along for almost a city block. And they are trying to even dig here even more so that they can come. See how deep it goes? To stand there on top of it and look down, it's amazing to see this and to actually know that several events in the Gospels took place right here. So this is one of the places where the Lord actually was present.
And while you're there, Bob, you can almost sense it, can't you? You can almost imagine that you're back there.
Yes, and if you notice on the wall, you can see where part of the layers of mortar has broken off, and they indicate that there were more than one, so that the water would not seep out. They probably put 2 and 3 layers of some type of mortar on there so that the water wouldn't dissipate in some fashion. It's amazing how deep that is.
I don't know. In this country, we seem to want to tear things down and build new things. Over there, they like to preserve, don't they, Nan?
They seem to. They keep digging more excavating to see what part of their history is. And this is very important, I think, for the whole world, not just for them themselves.
I feel like I'm right in a part of a travelogue here, Father. This is really neat to watch the way people do things. And you see the new and the old. You see tractors, you see horse-drawn vehicles, you see people of many different religions and faiths. You must have heard a lot of different languages spoken over there, Bob.
Yes, and you were wondering sometimes just where you were, you know. But again, you just put that out of your mind and you concentrate on what you were looking at the moment. Now here, this is being viewed right now.
Yeah.
This is one of our tour guides identifying the structure, the way it was built, how many centuries it has been built. And if I'm not mistaken, there's one section in here that one of the slabs of stone weighs as much as 20 ton. And when you look at it, you know it's one heavy bugger, I'll tell you. This girl was well versed in what she was doing. I don't know how many years she's been doing it, but she knew what she was talking about.
This is a time where I bet you wish you had a photographic memory, huh? So you could remember every word you hear.
Well, I'm lucky. On my 5 trips, I've taken probably now 60, 70 rolls of film, so I've got lots of pictures on all of these things that bring the whole trip back constantly. I think where we are right now, we are along the Way of the Cross, the Via Dolorosa, and this is at the beginning where the soldiers played dice for the tunic of Jesus. And we were able to see, actually in the floor of this building, the games that they had traced into the floor. I don't know if we're going to get a shot of that or not.
The games and the floor.
Yes, these are descriptions of them here. These are the actual ones, and we're in a place called the Antonia Fortress, and it was built by Herod. And this is where the soldiers had taken Jesus, and they played these games for his clothing. It is intriguing to see all of this there, because these are the original stones, they're the original drawings. And from out of this building, you begin the Way of the Cross, which is nothing like you do in a parish church. You are walking along the streets of Jerusalem for a good distance. It becomes chaotic. There are business going on. The street is narrow. Most of the people there are not Christians, so they're not paying any attention to what you're doing. And after a while, you kind of lose what you are trying to do, because there's just so many people all pushing and shoving in all kinds of directions.
Is there any pageantry throughout the year that would reconstruct the walk to the cross? Or
Yes, every Friday at 3 o'clock, the Franciscans lead any pilgrims through the Via Dolorosa from the first station right on to the end, and the station ends in Holy Sepulchre Church. But to get from the beginning to the church, it's this wandering through the streets of Jerusalem with all the business taking place as usual, and it must have been the very same way in the time of the Lord. No different at all. We are inside the Basilica of the Nativity in Bethlehem. This part of the church is under the control of the Greek Orthodox, and this is the oldest church standing in the Holy Land, and it's built over the place where Jesus was born. It is filled with the Orthodox symbols, the huge lights and candles. To the right of the altar is where you would go down a flight of stairs to be right where the spot where Jesus is born. And you see people here reverencing and kissing the star in the floor. It was here that the Holy Father knelt for a long, long time the other day, and he meditated. What I enjoyed was whenever I've been here, there's just hundreds of people there. When the Holy Father was there, they cleared them all out, and he had it all to himself. Now, I hope they do that for me the next time I go. But this is a very intriguing place to be in, to know that it is here that the Lord was born. On the other side of the wall, there is a little chapel, and we had Mass there with our tour group. What we're looking at right now is the little chapel of the Magi, and it's right next to where Jesus was born. And the Holy Father spent time there. He was praying his breviary there. We're now back inside the Basilica of the Nativity upstairs. We are now in the Church of the Dormition of Mary in Jerusalem. This church is near the upper room. It is here that tradition says that Mary fell asleep and was assumed into heaven. And you will notice an image of Mary asleep. It is a very, very beautiful church and a beautiful chapel, and you can see all the pilgrims gathered there. All around this little chapel are beautiful images of all the women in scriptures, and they are done in hammered copper and hammered silver. We spent quite a bit of time here. And there is another church above this one, and I remember the day we were there, there was a large group of people from Poland with many of their bishops celebrating Mass. We are underneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre here, and this is the Chapel of the True Cross, where St. Helena discovered the true cross of Jesus. You notice that window there. It says that she looked out of that window and could see something, and it was the true cross of Jesus. And so now this chapel is there in the Holy Sepulchre Church commemorating this event. The Holy Sepulchre Church, we say church, it is anything but a church that we know of. It's like a museum. There are pieces here and there and everywhere. And it is remarkable to go and to see all these various things all in this one building, covering this very special place.
I hear a lot of heavy breathing here. I think people having trouble climbing the hill here, Nan.
Oh, it was tough climbing the hill. Some of them didn't dare to tackle the hill, so they stayed in the bus. But even an 83-year-old nun, she went up that hill, and she was one of the first ones up there.
That makes you feel good when an 83-year-old nun's 10 paces ahead of you, Bob. Huh?
Well, no, she wasn't ahead of me. I was the fourth one up. But boy, let me tell you, I was panting when I got up there. This is most amazing up here, because this is where Mary visited Elizabeth when she was she was carrying her child. Actually, Elizabeth was also expecting John the Baptist at the time. And up here at the top, not this mural, this is the Basilica, but off on the other side, and I don't know if it'll show it, they had the Magnificat in 40 some odd languages, I believe. There was something going on in the Basilica at the time, so I did not get a chance to really go in and look at it. But they had a little shop up there that you could buy various things. And here you go. Here's the Magnificat in English. And if Peter was so kind as to back off, we'll see that there's some 40 other languages in there.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's very, very. Well, it's hard to believe that someone could take the time to scroll this out and put this up there in all these different languages for the people. And just recently, in the last year or two, I guess they've got a figure of Mary and Elizabeth up there, both showing they're pregnant. This is something new that they put at the top of the patio up there. It's really nice, beautiful place. And when you look out over the mountains, it's just breathtaking.
This is a little town called Ain Karim, where the Church of the Visitation is. And as you look out from the top, you're into the Judean Valley. And it's interesting that right across the valley on the other side is the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust memorial for the Jewish people of Israel. This painting here is in the Church of the Visitation. It's in the main church upstairs. Doesn't this look interesting here? It looks like an absolutely beautiful lake. Well, it's the Dead Sea. And you're looking at the country of Jordan on the other side. It's a little hazy. I sat in one of those chairs in the sun for about 45 minutes until somebody yanked me back on the bus. It was just a beautiful day there. The Dead Sea is full of salt, and I did not ever go into the Dead Sea, but people were swimming in there, and they looked like they were having a great deal of fun because all you do is float. You can't do much other.
I remember my mother telling me the story. Now that I listen to you people, and the memory banks start to kick in. You know, I'm old and it takes me a while, but I remember my mother, who was a fine swimmer as a young girl, when she went there, getting into the Dead Sea and just saying she could sit there and would be suspended and her head would be above water because the salt content of the Dead Sea was so tremendous. I imagine the deck chairs looked a little different back in the early part of this century than they do here.
We are now in Jericho. Jericho is an oasis in the desert. It doesn't look it right here, but if we were looking the other direction, we'd see the most plush vegetation. They grow all kinds of fruits and vegetables. We all sampled a lot of the fruits, and the fruit juice is delicious. Where we are here is the excavations where the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, and scripture scholars and those who have studied archaeology have spent a great deal of time here. One famous name is Catherine Kenyon. And we looked at all of these ruins. Quite a place. Now, an oasis in the desert, the temperature was about 90 degrees. Right above, as you looked up, you saw the mountain of the temptation where Jesus was tempted by the devil. There's the mountain of the temptation, that flat-topped mountain. And there is a monastery up there, and they have built cable cars. If you look close, there we go. We see the cable cars that go up part way up the mountain. Must be a great view. I have not done that yet. Those are new. I'll have to go back so we can...
That'll be trip
ride
number
the
6,
cable
right?
car. That'll be trip number 6, yes. You can also see how bleak the desert is with the mountains. And Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. That's what we contemplate during the Lenten season, and it's amazing. Once you have seen this desert, you wonder just how anybody could ever possibly stay there that long. We're driving up out of Jericho going north, and you can see the barrenness of the desert here on one side, and then we're looking at the irrigated side of the road, just from one side of the road to the other, of what water can do, and all kinds of vegetables and fruits are being grown here. And they also specialize in flowers. They send flowers all over the world. And you're looking at Jordan. The big mountain on the other side is country of Jordan.
Yeah, we're in a very significant place here in terms of biblical history, aren't we, Bob?
Just a bit. This is the area they call the Jordan River, where John the Baptist baptized Christ himself. It doesn't look like much right here. It's a very small stream, but down below that you'll see it expands into quite an area. And right here, this is where a multitude of people who will really get right out there, and they will dunk them and bring them back in. Everyone has to go into the water with a sheet over them. You have to strip except for this, and it's quite a thing. I reached down in there myself, and I've got quite a few little pebbles that I brought home. Here you see one of the individuals coming out, or two of them having been baptized already. But I had to bring some stones home, and like I say, I got quite a few from various areas, and one of them's from right here.
We are now walking into the little city of Capernaum. And Jesus loved this place, and they call it the town of Jesus. You'll notice the beautiful flowers. We're right on the Sea of Galilee. Capernaum is right on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. And here in Capernaum is Peter's house and the synagogue in which Jesus preached a great deal. We'll just slowly look at all of these beautiful things from this very, very special place. This is the synagogue in Capernaum, the remains of it today. What we're looking at is a synagogue that was built, maybe a century or two after the time of Jesus, but they have found that the bottom layer is the original one. Now we're looking right next door to the remains of the synagogue. This is a church that's built over Peter's house. That's underneath this church. This church is brand new. It was built, I think, in 1990. It's never open. I was in it once. On one of the trips, one of the Franciscans opened it, but it's seldom open to the public. But it has this amazing glass floor that looks down on all the ruins of the original place of where Peter lived. And it was here in Peter's house that Jesus stayed all the time he came to Capernaum. And they even can find the room in which he lived. Amazing, amazing experience.
Talk a little bit about the distances. Calvin was asking about the map, and those of us who were brought up listening to these Bible stories from the Bible wonder just how far it was from one place to another. Give us an idea.
Well, let's use Jerusalem as a base. Jerusalem to Jericho is probably around 25 miles through the desert. Jerusalem to Capernaum in the Galilee, I hope I'm right on this, is probably 40, 50 miles, maybe a little bit more. From Nazareth to Capernaum, maybe 15 to 20 miles. From Nazareth back to Jerusalem is 95 miles. The whole country of Israel isn't very big. It's about the size of the state of New Jersey. I think it's about 225 miles long and maybe 60 to 80 miles wide. That's it. Bethlehem is just outside of Jerusalem. It's probably as far as from Plattsburgh to Morrisonville, if it's that far. Very short distance. Just up the road from Capernaum is the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter, where Jesus gave the keys of the kingdom to Peter. Pope John Paul II was here the other day, and this church is built over the rock where Jesus said to Peter, "You are the rock." The Sea of Galilee is right here. Now, when we were there this past November, the lake level was very, very low, as you can see here. All the people down on the Sea of Galilee, where these people are standing, usually the water is way up there, lapping against the side of this little church. It's quite an experience to see the Sea of Galilee. It reminds me very much of Lake Champlain. If you didn't know, you'd think you were right here. And
As you said, the Sea of Galilee brings back a flood of memories from our childhood Bible stories.
yes, and here we are on the Sea of Galilee. I can hear, there's Christopher Cross right there in what looks to me like a pink shirt, and he is explaining many things there. I see people from the Chazy Champlain area standing there. We won't give any names. We'll let those who are watching say, "Oh, look who's there." And just up the road from where we are here is a place called Tabga. Tabga, if I remember correctly, is a word that means 7 springs. And these are hot springs. The water is very warm coming out of them. And we were told that the fishermen on the Sea of Galilee would always come near these springs to wash their nets. And also the fish would come near them too because they liked the warm water. And so it was here that Jesus found these fishermen. And it was along these very shores that he called those apostles who were fishermen to follow him. Now at Tabga is the place where Jesus multiplied the loaves and the fish. I think we will get there eventually from what we are seeing here. The Holy Father was also at Tabga. He was in the church there, and in the floor of the church there's a mosaic with the fish and the loaves.
A special thanks again to Pete and Kathy for giving us the footage here today. We're having a lot of fun fast forward and stopping and trying to decide what pieces to put together. Where are we?
Well, that's
There's
Kathy.
Kathy right there.
That's right. We're inside this Church of Peter's Primacy. And Kathy is touching what they call the Mensa Christi, the table of the Lord. And this is the rock. Peter, you are like a rock, and on this rock I will build my church. It's a very tiny little church, and as I mentioned, it's right on the Sea of Galilee. Look at this. This is when we got on a boat and we went out on the Sea of Galilee. Notice how calm it is. It was just a gorgeous day that day. And there are 4 boats here that take pilgrims out on the Sea of Galilee, and look at that one. It's called Mark. They were called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
The Gospels are
The Gospels right there. And I guess we're on Mark, and we're going to go floating along on the Sea of Galilee.
Wait a minute, I see you in there, Robert. What are you doing on the boat?
Well, I'm supposed to be reading some of Scripture, but we got out there, and Chris Cross is sitting there with me. He's identifying what he wants me to read. So they've shut off the engines, and we're just drifting along just as nice as can be, and it's probably 83, 84 degrees. And you'll find here that I get a good start. And see, Chris cuts me right off, but that's all right. I'm enjoying it anyway, because we're about ready, hopefully, to see one of the young men on the Jesus boat. They call it the boat of Mark, but one of the men's going to throw us out a net or show us how they did some of their fishing here. I hope it comes off pretty soon. That's good.
Now, what's going to happen?
Right now we're singing Amazing Grace here as we sail along the Sea of Galilee. And one of the fishermen on the boat, if you look very closely, he has a net. And exactly as they did it in the time of Jesus, he is going to throw the net into the sea.
Or as they said, cast the net.
Cast the net. And the net went in the water, and he left it there for a while, and he pulled it in, and there was not a thing in it. It was very scriptural. Very scriptural. So he announced to the people, "Should I try the other side?"
Oh, of course.
And he did, and guess what he caught? Nothing.
Nothing on either side. So he didn't recreate the scripture at all.
That's right.
We remember places in the Bible that talk about some pretty rough waters out. That was a beautiful day.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
But there were storms on Galilee.
Many of them. We won't see it here, but there is a space between the mountains that surround the Sea of Galilee, and it is in this space where the winds come through when the climate is in such a, whatever it is, whenever it's right for that. And that's what causes the winds to blow terribly there. And you never know when it's going to happen. So here we are. Oh, he's going to throw the net out on the other side of the boat here. I don't even know where he is. Oh, he's right up there at the top of the picture. Well, guess he didn't make it. We're now singing again.
This looks like the loaves and fishes.
This is it. This is the place called Tabgha, and we'll soon see the actual floor. Here it is right here, a mosaic that has been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. And behind it you see a little rock under the altar, and it was upon this rock that tradition says that Jesus placed the fish and then multiplied them. Our Holy Father was in this very church last week, and he sat probably in the very same chair that you see people sitting in. I know he was looking the place over because I saw this on television.
This looks interesting, Robert. What is it?
Oh, this is Basilica of the Mount of the Beatitudes. This is one beautiful place, and it's here that Father Gordon celebrated Mass out in the back in the gardens, and I was very fortunate. I brought my vestments with me, and this is where I assisted at Mass for the first time while over in Israel. And let me tell you, this was very special for me because it's here that Christ talked to the multitude of people, where we got all the Beatitudes, blessed are they that mourn, and so on and so forth. And I felt something very special up here, having been able to participate along with Father and the other priests and all of our contingent of people. After the Mass, we were very fortunate that our tour leader selected a group of us to walk on the mountainside where all of the people, the 5,000 or whatever, had assembled, and we walked down that mountain to catch our bus to go back. And again, this is an area where on the way down there's a cave, and supposedly Christ talked to his apostles numerous times in this cave. So we were able to sit there and contemplate all of this before boarding and going back to the hotel. Exceptional. You want to say? And here you see Father and I at the beginning of Mass.
Where we are on the hill overlooking the Sea of Galilee, you can't see the Sea of Galilee as we are here, but all of us could who were here at this Mass. You could see it through the trees and all the flowers that were around. I asked the people on the pilgrimage before we even began to determine what is your favorite place in the Holy Land. This is mine. I find this to be the most peaceful and one of the most powerful experiences here on the Mount of the Beatitudes. Now that's our deacon proclaiming the gospel at this wonderful spot.
All right, here's some hardy souls on their way down the hill.
You know, we had the opportunity, as Bob mentioned, some of us to walk down the side of the Mount of the Beatitudes, and you can see the Sea of Galilee there. It took a while to walk to the bottom, and when we got to the bottom, there is this cave. And tradition again says that Jesus, here's the cave. When Jesus was in this cave one night praying, he looked out, and there were the apostles in a boat. And the storm came up, and it was from here that he went and walked on the water and calmed the sea. It's quite a sight from this cave. It is above sea level, not too high. But to know that the Lord had been in this cave, and it was from here that he did walk on the water and teach his disciples quite a lesson. Right below the cave is the Church of Peter's Primacy. It's interesting in the Holy Land, once you have seen it and you know where everything is, the Gospels come alive. And the distances here at Galilee are very, very short. I mean, some of them are just a matter of half a mile. And it makes everything so real.
I think it was time to renew your marriage vows at Cana, wasn't it, huh? Celebrating your 43rd anniversary?
Yes, we renewed our marriage vows here at Cana, which is very important as far as history goes, because this is where Jesus changed the water into wine, and we had our marriage vows renewed there. There were quite a few of us there that had them renewed.
What is he showing right there? What were you looking at, do you know?
He's just passing out the papers, renewal vows
Oh, I
papers, and reading about the changing of the water into wine.
Did you make some new friends on this trip, Bob?
Oh, numerous friends. I had, I'll have to talk about the amount of the Beatitudes where I functioned as a deacon for the first time. Most of the people on the trip did not know that I was a deacon. And after that particular service, one of the ladies here, this is probably her head right here, she was a beautiful lady, solid white hair, just a mass. And she come up to me after the mass and she says, "And I knew there was something special about you."
Oh,
You know?
doesn't that
And
make
it
you
ju-
feel good
well,
all
I'll
over?
well, the whole trip. And she's from down Schenectady way. And she was one of the ones here at Cana whose husband did not come on the trip with her. And she approached and asked if it was... He dead? Oh, well, anyway, she asked... Yeah, that's right. Her husband was dead. And she asked if she could renew her wedding vows anyway. And they said, by all means. So amongst the couples, there was this one beautiful lady. And I can't tell you what her name was because it spells so funny. There's so many J's and Y's and Z's in it. I couldn't pronounce it if I had it, right?
Probably from Lion Mountain, right?
But it was exceptional for all of us. And we were given certificates of proof that we went through this ceremony. As a matter of fact, Father Gordon's the one that gave us our vows over again. And after this, we went across the street to another little shop, and that's where I got my little souvenirs of vino. Exceptionally good, they tell me, so we'll see. I haven't opened them yet. This is one of the highlights of our trip for the wife and I, and Nancy too, have been able to renew our marriage vows.
We are now in the tour bus and we are headed to Nazareth, and this is what you see as we're coming into the city of Nazareth. Nazareth in the time of the Lord was a very small place. Maybe it had 35, 40 people. It's now 80 to 100,000 people. And we are going to go to the Basilica of the Annunciation, the place where the angel appeared to Mary and asked Mary to be the Mother of God. We are now outside the Basilica of the Annunciation. We will see the outside of it right here. And this is the courtyard leading in. Again, our Holy Father, Pope John Paul II, was here the other day. He offered the major Mass of his tour in the Holy Land here. He was there on the Feast of the Annunciation, March the 25th. Inside the church there is a grotto, and the grotto is the place where the angel appeared to Mary. This is probably one of the most beautiful churches in the Holy Land. It is relatively new, as you can tell. And right now we're on the outside waiting to go in, and our tour leader, Christopher Cross, is explaining various things to us. He's just saying to the people that this church is an inverted lily. As we entered the basilica, there was a mass going on, and behind the altar you will see the grotto of the Annunciation. If you look closely where that light is, that is where the angel appeared to Mary. And there is a second floor to the basilica, and that hole in the ceiling is from upstairs, and you can look down into the grotto. There it is right there. Our Holy Father said Mass upstairs, but he actually was in that grotto. In fact, it looked like they couldn't get him out of it. They were trying to move him along and he wouldn't go. When I was there with the sisters of the diocese a few years ago, Sister Annunciata, who is now the Mother General of the Sisters of St. Joseph, Annunciata and Annunciation, this was her special place, and we were invited to go in there by one of the auxiliary bishops of Jerusalem who was present and about to offer Mass, and the whole group went there, and the bishop gave us a wonderful homily on the Jubilee year and of how all of us baptized into the image of the Lord Jesus are actually celebrating our 2000th birth with the Lord if we're made into the image and likeness of the Lord. It was quite a thing to hear, especially in this very beautiful place. On the walls here you will see various depictions of Mary, and they come from various countries of the world. And they're on the inside of the basilica, and they're also outside in the courtyards. Here's the one of the United States. That is the main altar in the basilica. That's where the Holy Father offered Mass.
And here we are at Mount Tabor, where the transfiguration of Christ took place. And by that I'm simply saying that Jesus brought Peter, James, and John to the mountaintop, and let me tell you, it is one mountaintop. Nothing but something like 17 hairpin turns going up by taxi. There's no individual vehicles that are permitted up there. You have to go by taxi. And let me tell you, folks, it's scary. but anyway,
You put your seatbelt on real tight, did you?
I'm telling you, while we were so packed into the taxi that you didn't have to worry about a seatbelt. But Father Emiot was celebrant for the Mass, and he was so kind as to let me function with him as his deacon. And again, I was exceptionally pleased because here is where Christ was transfigured, and he talked to Moses and Elijah, and Peter, James, and John just could not, they were so amazed that they said after it was all over, Jesus, let us build a tent here for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. I tell you, people, you just have to be there and feel it within yourself, spiritually in your heart, what transfigured so many, many years ago. Father, you got something you'd like to add?
Well, here on Mount Tabor is one of the most magnificent views of Israel. One part of the roof of this church you can go up on and look out, and you can see for miles and miles and miles. The day we were there was very, very clear, and it was a magnificent view. In the description of the Gospel, when the Transfiguration took place, a cloud went by, and out of the cloud came a voice, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." On this particular trip, the clouds were not that low, but I have been there where the clouds are on top of the church, which really makes the Scripture come very much alive. Here's our deacon proclaiming the Gospel at the Mass that we had there at Mount Tabor. It was interesting that during the Mass, and our group was 75 people, other tour groups, pilgrim groups, came into the church during the Mass, and at one point in time, I think we had a couple of hundred people in there. Remember that, Bob?
Yes.
And one of the groups were Asian, and all of a sudden we found them at communion time coming to communion to us, and we did not have enough hosts. We didn't think for all these people because we didn't start out with that many. But we managed to get through. I think
There was a miracle.
that was what you got ahead of me, Gordy. I think the Lord did a little multiplication there rather quickly. I don't know how we got through that, but we had enough for everyone. We really did.
That's kind of a great story. I can see it coming. I love it. What a view from the roof.
Yes, we're up on the roof of this very church, and you can see out into Israel. I can't tell you what we are looking at, but it is quite a view to see. Stretching out. And you notice the little villages, you can see them off in the distance. One of the things that impressed me so much, most of the cities and towns in Israel are built on a hill, or a tell, as they call them. Tel Aviv. Tel is a hill of some kind or another. And one of the gospel quotations from Jesus is that you don't light a lamp and put it under a bushel basket, you set it out for all to see, and that a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Well, they're all that way. They build all the towns and cities on a hill. We are now back in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and this is the tomb of the Lord. It's actually a little church built over the tomb, and the little church is inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and you notice how dark it is. It's very, very dark in Holy Sepulchre Church. This is the most sacred place that we have. I have had the privilege of offering Mass inside the tomb of Jesus, 5, 6, 7 times. I've lost count, and each one of the times is just such an amazing event. The tomb is very small. You can fit maybe 7 or 8 people in there comfortably. And you always celebrate the Feast of Easter in there. It's always the Mass of the Resurrection. And when I have offered Mass there, it's always very early in the morning. Just like it says in the Scriptures, very early in the morning, Mary went to the tomb and found it empty. Here we are inside the tomb. We are now inside the Dung Gate, one of the gates of the old city of Jerusalem, and what we're looking at is the ruins of the temple. There's nothing left here except rocks and huge piles of stone. And this was the very first time that I had ever been down into this part of the temple ruins. You had to be careful going down in here because the walkways and the level stretches could catch you and you could go flying in any direction. Our tour guide is yelling at us, "You're now standing on a 2,000-year-old rock." Now, was it born in the year 2000? I think it was, or 2,000 years ago. It was there a long time ago. But what we're looking at are, again, tradition says these were the rocks that were there. This is one of the remaining walls of the temple in Jesus' time. As you go along that wall, you eventually come to the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall of the Jewish people, which we will see in a moment here. We are on one side of the temple, and these are called the uneven stairs. If you look very closely at the stairs, you'll find them different shapes and sizes and widths. And these stairs are the actual stairs that Mary and Joseph took Jesus to the temple. There's our tour guide, Christopher Cross, sitting on one of the stairs. And the stairs were made this way because so many people went to the temple, it slowed everybody down, just like speed bumps today slow us down. And so what we are looking at is one of the actual, we know that these are the stairs and this Jesus was present in this part of the temple.
That looks familiar.
Well, this is the Western Wall. This is the most sacred place for the Jewish people. This wall is part of the original temple. And you will notice that the Jewish people, well, everyone that's there and at the Western Wall goes up and prays there, but especially the Jewish people. We will get closer to it here soon. The wall is divided. The men can go on one side and the women on the other. Unfortunately, they still have that. We're not going to argue with that at all. But you walk up to the wall, and I find it to be a very, very emotional experience to be there. And you will notice that the walls have, well, there's cracks in it between the stones. And the Jewish people write out prayer intentions and they stuff them into these little cracks. The Holy Father did that the other day. He did a prayer of forgiveness for the whole church, and he put his little paper into one of the cracks on the wall. I love this part of the pilgrimage. It really has little to do with what Christ preached, but the Lord truly was at the temple and was there many times preaching. And so for us too, this is one of the remains that we have of the Lord's presence. Now what we have here obviously is the women's side of the Western Wall. Sometimes we hear it called the Wailing Wall, and I understand that the Jewish people don't like that term Wailing Wall. They prefer Western Wall. It is the Western Wall of the original temple. I think our camera will change here and it will go to the men's side. And you will notice when the Jewish men pray, they have a rhythm to their body. And the rhythm of the body is showing the joy of praying, but it's also kind of throwing their prayer up to the Lord as high as they can get it. It was also interesting on the plane ride over to Israel that many of the Jewish men that were aboard the plane would wrap themselves up in their prayer shawls, and they would pray the Torah on the way over. If you notice the rhythm of the man right now who is praying at the wall, some people call it the bobbing prayer, but you notice the movement that there's a prayer shawl, a couple of prayer shawls, and they come there and they offer their prayer. It is just an amazing thing to be there at the Western Wall.
Take a picture of it anyway.
Well, the lights are back on in the theater. We finished our popcorn. Nancy's made us a bunch of hot dogs. I had hot dogs and sauerkraut the other night. I don't know how that might fit in here, but I just wanted some.
Is this Friday? No, it's Thursday.
No, this is Thursday as we're recording this, so don't worry about that part of it.
Right, okay.
We've had an exceptional time here today. What are we showing here, Father?
This is a panoramic view of the old city of Jerusalem with the Dome of the Rock right in the middle. And I think down at the bottom we have little views of Bethlehem and Nazareth. But this panoramic view of Jerusalem is really something to see. It's even better if you go there and see it with your own eyes and stand over there on the Mount of Olives and gaze over at the city of Jerusalem.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this little program today has inspired a few folks to be on the plane next time. And if you think you're going to get away with 75 the next time, yeah, I think you better charter 2 jets. And hopefully you'll leave on time. Nancy, what have you got there? Oh, the miracles of Jesus at Galilee.
Yes, of Galilee. And it depicts all the different miracles that happened along the sea when the nets were filled with fish, and the pigs went over the
mountain.
and they were drowned.
Yep.
All along the different miracles that it shows. And when they
It's
changed
really
them
quite beautiful.
for the bread, the dividing of the loaves and fishes.
I'll tell you what, I almost feel as though I went with you.
That's great. That's
when
our
you
intent.
said when you said we had a spaghetti supper, I could almost sense that I was getting the old fork to work there. But it was a great experience for you. I know it was. I can tell it was. And I know you'd love to do it again.
Well, God willing, I'll be there in 2001, sometime during the course of that year.
He got you this far.
Yes, very fortunate.
Up and down
I'm
those
telling you.
mountains, and
That's right.
you got your ticker fixed, and you're good for another
Yeah.
30, 35 years.
Well, I'm hoping for at least 15. I'll go for 20 though.
You know what? We take whatever we can get, don't we, Father?
That's correct. We never know what the will of God is for any one of us. As Robert well knows,
Mm.
when he gave the homily about accepting things in life and you didn't know, and the very next day he was taken ill. But we never know.
We're here smiling now on the 30th day of March 2000, talking about a delightful trip, and don't you feel as though we ought to have the National Geographic logo somewhere across the bottom of the screen now? It's been a great experience for me. I haven't traveled far and wide, but through your eyes and through your voice and your emotions connected with it, I was able to enjoy it. And I'm sure my mother spirit is up there watching over. She'll sing, "Well done, my children. You did a good job there today."
Her spirit was probably with us on the trip.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was. I thank you all once again, Father Gordon and Deacon Bob and Nancy. It's been a great experience for Calvin and myself. We hope we don't know quite how the finished product is going to look, because we were piecing things together during the course of this program, recorded in this very neat studio on the Ridge Road in Champlain for Hometown Cable. But thanks again so much for being with us today and allowing us to share that part of your life.
Our thanks for you taking an interest in showing it to the public. Very much. We appreciate
That's what
it.
we like to do. Nancy,
appreciate
you
it.
make good spaghetti?
Well, I try.
I think I can find my way to your place.
Okay.
Thanks again, Father.
Thank you. There's an expression that is often used that once you visit the Holy Land, your life will never be the same again. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and I believe it now too. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.